Reading of God's Word. This is Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 1 to 14. If you're trying to follow along, it's the New Living Translation. This is Solomon's Song of Songs, more wonderful than any other. And now we have the voice of a young woman. Kiss me, and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How pleasing is your fragrance! Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you. Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom. And the voice of the young women of Jerusalem. How happy we are for you, O king. We praise your love even more than wine. And the young woman again, how right they are to adore you. I am dark, but beautiful, O women of Jerusalem, dark as the tents of Kedar, dark as the curtains of Solomon's tents. Don't stare at me because I am dark. The sun has darkened my skin. My brothers were angry with me. They forced me to care for their vineyards, so I couldn't care for myself. My own vineyard. Tell me, my love, where are you leading your flock today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? For why should I wander like a prostitute among your friends and their flocks? The young man, if you don't know, O most beautiful woman, follow the trail of my flock and graze your young goats by the shepherd's tents. You are as exciting, my darling, as a mare among Pharaoh's stallions. How lovely are your cheeks. Your earrings, set them afire. How lovely is your neck, enhanced by a string of jewels. We will make for you earrings of gold and beads of silver. And now the young woman, the king is lying on his couch, enchanted by the fragrance of my perfume. My lover is like a sachet of myrrh lying between my breasts. He is like a bouquet of sweet henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. And now may God add his blessing to the reading and the hearing of his word.
We're looking at our first sermon today in the book of Song of Solomon. Not sure why we're doing this, except that I felt God laid it on my heart about a year ago to do this. I feel like this is a very timely book, given what's happening in our culture today. But many commentators have called this the most difficult book in the entire Bible to understand, and there are wide-ranging interpretations of the book, you might say. And so it's a challenge. It's definitely been a challenge for me, and I've done this with fear and trembling. But it tells us in the very first verse that it's a song, which means that it's poetry. It's about love, but it's not just about any kind of love. As we saw last week, it's about love it's really around a marriage ceremony and between a married couple, a man and a woman. But the reason that we know that this is between a married couple, because in that day that it was written, it would be unthinkable for this kind of intimacy to happen outside of a marriage relationship. That wouldn't have even been conceivable for them. So that's why we know, in addition to numerous things within the book itself that we'll see as we go through it. So what about the book? First, let's talk about what it's not, okay? This is not a manual for the do's and don'ts of sex, okay? Let's just get that out there. Let's get it, okay? We loosened everything up now. That's not what this is. This is not a manual. You go there and find out what you're supposed to be doing and not doing. It's not some kind of off-color, edgy book that we should keep from our kids. And another way that people have looked at this book is as an allegory. In other words, that everything in it, in fact, for a while in church history, both in Jewish history and in the church history, this was it was taboo to think of this as anything but an allegory, which means this is about Jesus and the church, and so every person in the book has assigned a different meaning. So you don't talk about this as it really is. You talk about it as allegorical, but that's not what it is either. So what is it? It's a love song. It's called the Song of Songs. It's like when in the Old Testament it talks about the temple and the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies wasn't just a holy place. It was the holy place. It was the most holy place. So this is the song of all the songs. That's what that means, and it's a love song. And though Solomon appears at various times throughout the book, we're not positive that he wrote this book. I mean, this is a book about faithful covenant love between a husband and a wife. It's kind of hard to see how Solomon did that with 700 wives and 300 concubines. How do you do that? I don't even want to go there right now. So the truth is, and many commentators say, we're not positive about who the author is. But Solomon is brought in. Perhaps it is a possibility that this was written by Solomon after his marriage to his first wife. But then he didn't continue in faithful monogamy, you might say, with that. So there's speculation about it. What we do know is that this is a celebration of love. It's pure poetry. It's real beauty. It's the definition of biblical love. So it's going to be hard for us to construct a storyline around it. So I'm not really going to try to do that. I'm going to try not to, make this a story from beginning to end. So it's going to be hard for me to have point one, point two, that these are the little points that we're trying to get with a common theme. I'm just going to go through it, okay? And we're just going to go through it and look at it and see where it might apply to our own lives. So let's do that. This is about marriage, as I said. This is most likely, especially the beginning of the book, but it's most likely about a marriage or about a courting, marriage, consummation, faithful love in the marriage. It's all those things together. If there were a storyline, that would be kind of what the storyline is. So most likely here, especially in the first 4 verses or so, it's the betrothal time. It's more than likely an engagement period. What's interesting is that this letter, or this book, this song, you might say, was read at many, many, many wedding ceremonies. Wedding ceremonies would last 7 days sometimes. And so they would use different parts of the book during the wedding ceremony, it said, on different days of the ceremony. So that's how important the book is. We still use it. I've preached from especially where it says many rivers cannot quench love, from chapter 8, and I've used that in weddings many, many, many times. But most likely what we have here is engagement period. Probably they would get engaged even up to a year before the wedding would actually be carried out. And so during that time, the father of the bride would be getting together his dowry, the price that he would pay to the groom the groom would pay for the daughter, would pay the father of the bride. I didn't get any money when I married off my daughters. What's wrong with this picture right now? That's why I had a lot of girls. I was hoping to get some money. Okay, I better stop going down that road. That won't be good. But the language here, even though they're probably betrothed and they're talking about one another, especially early on, then in the middle of this, we'll see that it seems that they're talking to each other. But even in spite of that, they probably don't know each other very well, and yet there's this language of love. Now, what I want you to take from this is that this is a prototype of what a perfect love relationship would look like. Nobody lives up to this. Nobody does, okay? So let's just get that out there right now. So this would be a perfect prototype that God is trying to show us through this beautiful love song, what it's supposed to look like. So she's longing for him. She's thinking about him. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out. Therefore virgins love you. In the version that Ward read, therefore the young women love you. That's probably more accurate. Draw me after you. Let us run. The king has brought me into his chambers. So what can we draw from that? Well, clearly she desires him physically. But there's way more to it than just that. She doesn't want just a physical relationship with him. She sees something much deeper. She's in love with him and knows that his love is better than anything she could imagine. Well, why is she so in love with him? Well, it says that his name, she has this deep respect for him. His name is oil poured out. So oil was the sign of goodness. Oil was the sign of prosperity. And for her, his very name was that kind of oil poured out on her. Goodness, prosperity on her. But she's not the only one. The young women also think the same thing about him, which means that he has an important reputation around town. He is well respected. He's an upstanding citizen, and everyone knows it. And so she respects him so much, and she loves him for who he is, that he is an upstanding man. She's smitten with him, and she wants to be with him. But there's something that I want you to see about how she goes about doing this. Most people in our culture look at evangelical Christians as they equate us with the Puritans. I've heard this, and I've read it, and being puritanical is almost a negative in our society. And what is it that they think? That we are very prudish, that we are very backwards when it comes to talking about relationships or about sex or about these things. So the typical stereotype would be that they say about us is that we feel like sex is a necessary evil. It's wrong. We don't want to talk about it very much. And that relationships are essentially driven by men. That the woman is to be submissive and quiet and can never drive anything in the relationship. These are sort of stereotypes that our world thinks about evangelical Christians. And so what we have in a culture is that it's gone exactly opposite that, where both men and women are very aggressive in relationships, that there really is no difference between the two. In fact, we're completely blurring the lines between gender. It doesn't matter who you are. You can just do whatever it is that you want. So the question here is this young lady, what is she like? Is she aggressive and assertive? Or is she completely passive? Well, she's neither. She's neither. I think that what the writer is telling us is a biblical approach to relationships. So here's what she does. She's very honest about her feelings. And yet, at the same time, she asks him to take the lead. Do you notice that? She's very honest about her feelings, and yet she asks him to take the lead. Well, it's not very popular today. That's true. But God's plan for marriage is that the husband take the lead in pursuing his wife. God wants men to pursue their wives, even if it's hard, even if there's conflict, even if there's difficulty. He is asking men to pursue their wives, and that's exactly what she is asking him, to pursue her. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Let him do that. It doesn't say, I will go kiss him. Let him kiss me. I know that my wife is always happy when I pursue her, when I do thoughtful things for her. I should do it a lot more than I do. When I plan fun things to do together, when I bring her flowers, she loves Sunflowers. Oh, she loves sunflowers. Every time there's sunflowers, she goes giddy. So, if I surprise her with important plans, she loves it when I take the lead. But it's way more than just pursuing her likes. I think what is in mind here is an actual pursuit of her heart. What is going on in her heart? To know your wife, to know her heart, and to do that, it involves a lot of listening, a lot of asking, pursuing your wife's heart. This is an art that is lost today. So men less and less pursue their wives, and women are having to take the lead. And it's not something they will necessarily want to do, but women are good at it. They'll just step in the void and lead. But if I ask my wife about that, she says, I'd rather not. I'd rather you took the lead, and I'll go with you. I think that's the biblical view of marriage. But I want you to notice that she's not a wallflower either. She's not a wallflower. She lets her feelings be known. She's not, and here's the thing, she's not manipulating, okay? She's not trying to get a response by saying things like, oh, will he like me? Or how should I act? Or what will make him like me? Or how should I do this? Or when I come in, should I say something? Should I not? Should I worry about all the particulars so that he will like me? Isn't this what we do? We go in a room, and at one point there's somebody that we like a lot. And so we're trying to figure out what they think is impressive, and we become that person so that we can impress. This is what we all do at times in our lives. But she doesn't do any of that. She just says what she feels. She's not afraid to say what is on her mind. You see how she's playing? She's neither one. She's neither the aggressor, nor is she the wallflower that doesn't say anything. And she is not a manipulator. She just says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out. She's just smitten, right? She's full of desire. She really is full of desire, but she handles it in a godly way. She expresses herself, but she wants him to take the lead on it. So that's a good question for us. What do we do with desire? See, desire is clearly a godly thing. He put desires in our heart. We have desires. All kinds. We have sexual desires. But it goes way beyond that. See, what's driving all of it is this heart desire to be known, right? To be known. So we're living in a society that gets its desires satisfied any way it wants to. We would never even think about going hungry, right? We're hungry for 3 minutes, we're going to go find something to eat. It's the way we work as a society. If we're bored, we literally have thousands of vehicles or ways of getting on board with entertainment. I mean, you just have to pull the phone out of your pocket. And some are healthy, some are unhealthy, but we don't want to be bored. We struggle with just sitting quietly and in silence. And so the push of our culture is if you have sexual desire, you satisfy that desire. It's just an urge like being hungry is. But see, that's not what we have here. What we have is this dance of desire, where it's not just about this physical urge with her at all. Though some people will look at it that way, of course, but see, if that's all it is, if all we're doing is satisfying a physical desire when we have an urge and we don't look at it in a deeper way, then all we're doing is using another person to fulfill ourselves. And that's the ultimate in manipulation, isn't it? If we're just satisfying some physical urge, then it's just manipulation. Well, she's not expressing just a physical urge. It's a desire to be known, to be loved. It's a desire for intimacy beyond the physical. Brothers and sisters, this is what we long for. It's in our very DNA. Ever since Adam and Eve fell in the garden and their relationship was broken, not only with God and with themselves, but with each other. That relationship got broken. And this longing for that God-shaped hole to be satisfied, to be filled, that longing is in every single one of us. The question is, how are we going to fill that? Well, men, I want to tell you, pursue your wives. It's only Jesus who can ultimately fulfill it. Pursue your wives. See where you get with that. Let's keep going. So perhaps now in verse 5, they're speaking to each other. And she says this, I am very dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. See, now she makes a statement about her appearance. And here's the thing about appearance. It's very culturally conditioned, right? It's completely culturally conditioned. We have our ideas of what is beautiful. All of us have in our mind's eye, when we see something that's beautiful to us, that's beautiful. But you can't be naive and not think it's absolutely culturally conditioned. Have you heard of the foot binding in China? So what they would do with a young girl's foot is that they would take it and they would break it in half, and they would put the toes and fold them underneath the foot, and then they would bind that, and they would make the girls walk on these broken feet. The idea was that when they grew into adulthood, they didn't want to have a foot that was more than 3 inches long. And that was sexy. I mean, that was sexy. And if you didn't have that, you probably wouldn't get your daughter married off. That was the most beautiful thing. They wanted to see the feet. They wanted to see the feet. Now, we look at that and we go, what? That's not sexy. That's morbid, right? That's our view of it. But that was their view of beauty in those days. Have you ever seen paintings from 200 years ago? They're all plump, right? That was sexy. And why was that sexy? Because those people that had enough money to buy food were plump. So it meant you had affluence. That was considered altogether. You wanted to be with someone who was affluent and they were plump. That was sexy, right? Oh, there's so many ways. You think about, I've seen pictures of people in Africa, of ladies in Africa, where they have the rings around their neck and they're making their necks long. The longer your neck is with all those rings around it, you've seen that, right? Should have brought a picture. That was just beautiful, beautiful. Well, we don't look at that either, do we? That's not beautiful. Well, notice what she says here. She says, I am very dark. So she's not making a racial statement, okay? That's not what this is. This is more of a social statement. How so? Notice it says she is dark because she's been out in the sun. Well, why has she been out in the sun? Well, it tells us there. It says on verse 6, do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. And then here's the key. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards. She might have been like a Cinderella. She might have been a half-sister. It says my mother's sons, which means maybe they didn't share the same father. It's all speculation. But the point that we do know is that the brothers made her work out in the vineyard. Anybody who was wealthy would have people work in the vineyard. And so if you were wealthy, you were not dark. And remember, we're talking about Middle Eastern. We're not talking about various races here. We're talking about Middle Easterners. And so they get in the sun and they go dark. It just goes dark. It's the type of skin that they have. And if you work inside, you're not nearly as dark. That's the idea here. In other words, she's saying, I've just been treated, I've been out in the fields. I haven't had, and then it says, but my own vineyard I have not kept, which means she hasn't kept up her looks or anything. So she's making the statement, I hope he won't reject me for that reason. But notice her honesty. She's very honest. She says, I'm dark but lovely. I think she knows she's lovely. I don't think she's uptight about that. Or maybe she doesn't, because later on we're going to see how he affirms her. But this is not false humility. I think that she knows, I think she has a pretty good self-image. What she's worried about is being rejected for the cultural thing, that he's probably of a higher birth and she's a nothing working in the vineyards. And probably the son has made her not as beautiful as she could be. So an elementary school teacher was grading a science test at home that she had given to her elementary school class, and the subject was the human body. And the first question was, name one of the major functions of the skin. And one child wrote, to keep people who look at you from throwing up. That's what your skin is good for. So the question for us is, what is real beauty? Perhaps you're someone who avoids looking in the mirror much, or maybe you're somebody that's the opposite and you obsess in the mirror over how you're looking. From a 2012 article on National Eating Disorders Association website that's entitled The War on Women's Bodies, the Media, Body Hatred, and Eating Disorders, comes this. The average woman in America sees about 3,000 ads each day, many of which send messages about what the ideal female body should look like. But 98% of American women are not as thin as the fashion models who supposedly have the right body type. The average American woman is 5'4" and weighs 165 pounds. The average Miss America winner is 5'7" and weighs 121 pounds. It's not surprising, then, that 42% of first to third grade girls want to be thinner. 81% of 10-year-old girls are afraid of being fat. 70% of 18 to 30-year-old American women don't like their bodies. And 60% of women in middle age still remain unsatisfied with their bodies. 50% of girls use unhealthy weight control behaviors, such as skipping meals, vomiting, and taking laxatives. Nearly 20 million women will suffer from an eating disorder at some point in their lives. Every culture has its criteria for what beauty is. And I will say this to both men and women. Do not take your beauty cues from the culture, because it's devastating. It's a rare person that measures up to the beauty cues of our culture. It is merely cultural conditioning, and it has nothing to do with beauty. Nothing to do with beauty. Here's the truth. The truth is, you are beautiful. It doesn't matter what you don't like about your body. It doesn't matter. You are beautiful. You've been created in the image of the Holy One, beautiful, splendorous, majestic God of the universe. He made you the way you are with the tendencies that you have, and you are beautiful. Let's state that. So I know we've been conditioned by our culture to accept one version of beauty. And these are lies. They're lies that we need to reject. Just because you don't measure up to some fashion model somewhere doesn't mean that that's a true story. It's a false narrative that somehow you only have value if you look a certain way. That is a lie. And I just want to declare it here. So men, if your wife is feeling this way, how should you react to that? Look at what the groom says here of her. Verse 8, most beautiful among women, he makes that statement. Verses 9 and 10, I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with string of jewels. 15, little past, one past what we have. But behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. What does he do? He sets her heart at ease. I love you. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you've put on some weight. I don't care if you're in an accident and get deformed. I don't care about your appearance. It doesn't need to measure up to anything that our culture is saying. I want to know you. I want to love you. He sets her mind at ease. He doesn't care how dark she is or how much the sun has roughened her up. He doesn't care that she might be from a lower class. He thinks she is beautiful. And then he does this. He compares her to a horse. Ouch. Men, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Do not take these verses literally. You, my darling, look just like a horse to me. So Pharaoh's chariots were being pulled only by the most majestic animals, right? And you got to admit, horses are majestic. I grew up fox hunting. My uncles and my grandfather all had horses, and we would go fox hunting, and we'd do the jumps and all the stuff. I'd sit on a horse for 6 hours one day, and I love horses. They're just majestic, majestic animals. So take it in that sense, okay, ladies? Take it in that sense. Beautiful. Adorned, gorgeous, gorgeous. See, this hints at much more than just physical beauty, doesn't it? It's way more than that. It's this majestic character and quality that this beautiful animal would show to be worthy to pull Pharaoh's chariot. Just this beautiful, it smacks of this equality of how important, how great, how beautiful this is. And he's complimenting. It's clearly a compliment for her. And so her response is, she just wants to be with him. You see, this is the way this works. Pursuit, respect, pursuit, respect, desiring to be together, desiring to know one another. And so her response is that she wants to be with him, even at the risk of her reputation. Look what it says here in verse 7. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon, for why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? So she's willing to go out to where he's tending his flocks. He's a shepherd. She's not sure where he is, but she is willing to be misunderstood. It says here, who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions. This is what prostitutes would do. They would go out in the fields, they'd wear a veil, and they'd go near the flocks and the shepherds, and then they would be able to do their business transaction out there. And so she's saying she's willing to be misunderstood as one of those so she can go find the one she so loves. That's all that's in her mind. She's pursuing. She wants to be with the one that has loved her so well, that doesn't care what she looks like, that doesn't care about any of the status or any of the whatever it is. He wants to be with her too. He pursues her. He tells her how lovely she is, and all she wants to do is be with him. See, there's a vulnerability there. There's a risk. Isn't that what it is? In real intimate relationships, there's a vulnerability. I want to let you in and let you know all the junk that I'm even thinking about. This is me, broken. I got nothing, but I'm willing to risk it because I know you love me. I know you won't reject me if I tell you the deepest secrets in my heart. So let me flip it. Are you the kind of person that will say to your spouse, it doesn't matter to me what you tell me, what you admit to me, what comes up, I am going to love you, I am committed to you, I will not reject you. Please open your heart to me. See, that's risky. It's risky. But the point is, she's willing to risk being seen as a prostitute. And yet he says to her, here's where I am, come out and see me. That's the thing about intimacy. There's vulnerability with it. I read this quote last week from Tim Keller's book on marriage, but it's worth repeating here. To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. You can carry on all your lives as a married couple and love one another, but not know one another, not be willing to open up one another, and you will have this superficial relationship for good, and it will never satisfy. It will never go to a deeper level. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. That's why we don't open up, right? That's why we're not vulnerable with one another. We are terrified of rejection. It's embarrassing. Every one of us has things we've thought about that are embarrassing to us. We don't want the other person. We're terrified of rejection. It's our greatest fear. But to be known, but to be fully known and truly loved is a lot like being loved by God. It's what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense. It humbles us out of our self-righteousnesses and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us. Brothers and sisters, though the Song of Solomon is talking about human love between a husband and a wife, it is most definitely pointing to the love of God. It's pointing us directly to Jesus, who is the bridegroom that loves his church, of which we are part, and who he gave his life for. You may be one that has given in to your desires for sexual intimacy in inappropriate ways. The truth is, who hasn't? If we take Jesus seriously, that our thought life and what we do out physically are the same thing, it's the same sin. If we do that, who is free from guilt? Maybe you're struggling with your body image. I've struggled with that for years. You just don't like the way you look. My guess is that's a lot of you. My guess is there's tons of things you'd love to change about your own body. What Jesus is saying to us today is that he is smitten with you. Do you think he's smitten with you because of your physical beauty? No. Do you think he's smitten with you because you're so lovely on the inside? Nope. He's smitten with you just because he loves you and has decided to pour out his love on you so that you might become beautiful. He doesn't love you because you're beautiful. He loves you to make you beautiful. That's what his love does. He's smitten with us because he loves us. And that is the definition of beauty. That is what makes us so ravishing. We are not beautiful apart from his love for us. When the God of the universe says that he wants to come and he wants us to know him and to be known by him and to be loved by him, what more could we want? That's the fulfillment of desire. See, the dance of desire is to express our deepest desire to the only one that can truly fulfill them, Jesus, the one who laid down his life, gave his life for people who weren't that beautiful, and he has made us beautiful. That's the gospel, and it changes everything. Let's pray.